You're listening to City of Muses on Paris Underground Radio. Welcome back to City of Muses on Paris Underground Radio. I'm your host, Jennifer Garrity. I'm a screenwriter, filmmaker, and the creator and founder of the Paris Underground Radio podcast network. Each week, I sit down with an artist or creative to talk about what inspires them, what their creative process is like, and how Paris plays into it all. Doni Belau began her third career with a dream and some intuition. She thought women traveling in small groups around the world create a special kind of magic. Since 2009, Doni has been recreating this magic through her company, Girls Guide to the World, which now visits more than 40 countries around the globe. Are you curious to know where the woman who's visited 83 countries would like to go next? Well, please allow me to introduce Doni Belau, author and founder of Girls Guide to the World. Hello, Doni. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm thrilled. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I want to know everything, but can you start by telling us who you are and what you do?
Wow. Who am I? Who am I? You know, that's the big question, right? So I am a girl from Nebraska, the very smack dab middle of the United States. Thanks to my parents having a big appetite for travel and adventure, I got out of there pretty early. I went to boarding school at age 16, where I actually met my husband. So we are childhood sweethearts, really high school sweethearts, went to the prom together.
No.
Hilarious. We did break up about 8 times over the course of 8 years and then got married. And, more than 30 years have passed since then. We have a couple of grown kids who are amazing, raised them in New York. But recently we moved because I'm just tired of the winters. Moved down to New Orleans, and that's during sort of, October to April time. We have had a place in France for about 24 years. I call myself a part-time expat, whereas you are a full-time expat. We are over in Paris at our apartment whenever we can. We were actually just there. And we also have a house down near Bordeaux, not in the city, which I love that city. It's just gotten so great. But we're actually about 45 minutes east, not far from Saint-Emilion. We're right on the Dordogne River. So that is sort of my happy place, peace and quiet and birds and all of that. And then the other, just to add another thing into my crazy gypsy life that I live, we live on a sailboat in the summer. So yeah, I'm just kind of always, and then of course I'm traveling all the time. So my daughter's friends say, "Where's your mom?" And she said, "Well, I have to look on Instagram because I don't really know." It's a wild life, but it's fun. It's a lot more fun than doing dishes, as I often say.
It sounds incredible. It sounds idyllic, in fact. Can you tell us about this company that you've created?
Absolutely. So I had 2 other careers. This is my third career. I was in the film business, produced television commercials. Then I was a stay-at-home mom. Then I started in politics, a not-for-profit work, started a not-for-profit in South Africa. Helping kids with HIV was an after-school program that was really rewarding. But at a certain point, around about 2009, saving the world was burning me out, which, not-for-profit and political work is some of the most important work that's done in the world, but it is, and you meet cool people, so interesting, but super burnout kind of field. And a lot of people do. And I applaud those who've stuck into it for a lifetime. So I started to sort of remake what I was going to do. I kind of backed into this idea of trying to do something around Paris. So Paris is, and remains my love, and sort of, where I feel most at home in the world, even though I'm not there enough. But, and it just inspired me. It inspired, I guess my creative side, my love of beauty. Actually, I used to have a expat radio show many years ago, and I would ask everybody, what it is if they left Paris, what they miss about it. And, everybody, not everybody, and I know people who really don't like Paris, but so many women fall in love with Paris. So that was me. And I decided I wanted to do something around this love of mine. being Paris. And so I started Girls Guide to Paris in 2009, now 15 years ago, with the intention of being an online go-to guide for Paris. So just like what it says. Had no concept of how to monetize this. I could write a book about how not to start a business. I had no business plan. I had no clue what I was doing. I'm coming out of politics, not for profit. So, it was before Wix pages and Square, all the easy ways to create a website. So we coded this thing. I hired a guy. Obviously, I had no idea how to code, but so it was like the huge learning curve. And then as things went along, I garnered a lot of readers. We had a great blog going there, sort of in the heyday of blogs, but I was making no money. So that, working like 10 hours a day and making no money, actually losing money, that's not very fun after a while. So then I came upon, after trial and error, the idea of doing tours. And the first one we did was in Paris. I actually did it with my life coach, the one who really helped me reinvent myself this third time. And it was a huge success. However, I was stressed out, thinking this is really hard. This is I don't know if I'm good at this. These were the coolest women ever. I mean, these were her handpicked clients. So I thought, oh, God, what if I had some really demanding and difficult women? And so I didn't do it. Another one for maybe another year and a half. I did another one to Provence, and just like anything that you're learning, it just gets easier and you get better at it and you develop more skills. And so, flash forward 15 years, we started out in Paris and then France, and then we moved to, let's do a trip in France and the UK. And then turns out not everyone likes to go to Paris every single year like I do. So, we added in more countries, and now we have 65 trips going to 40 countries. And we're one of the largest, if not the largest, women's only travel group in the world in terms of number of trips. We offer really small group travel, 6 to 10 women, so that we could really get to know each other. And it's really an empowering experience for all of the women, including myself and those of us who are facilitating.
It's incredible. You will likely not remember this, but we have met before. We actually met very briefly, probably almost 15 years ago, or maybe like 13 years ago.
You were looking familiar to me.
You launched, I think you had an event in Paris, a champagne bar just off the Champs-Élysées for a bunch of bloggers and things like that. I think it was when you were first launching your tours.
Yeah.
And the reason that I mention that is because I went to that event and I brought a friend with me. And that friend ended up having an experience based on that night that ended up becoming the inspiration for a pilot episode of a TV show that I produced.
No.
And so you actually sent me on this whole trajectory, like a new trajectory for my career. And it was all because of you and Girls Guide.
No way.
Yes.
No
and
way.
I only really put that together last night.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible?
Isn't that cool? It's like we just don't know. You don't know who this podcast is going to reach and affect. We don't know the effect that we're having, whether positive or negative, frankly, right?
Sure.
So you got to try and pull it together and put your best energy out there in the world. And I do think it has a ripple effect. And also, coming back to you when other people, I mean, gosh, when you tell me that totally just floors me, and it just makes me so happy. And I want to know more, about the TV show. Wow. How cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. Just like this one, and it was like a little nugget with my friend who was here visiting. She met the waiter. They had a little love story, and that became the impetus for this TV show called L'amour or less.
Wow, what a great title too.
Thank you. Thank you. Very proud of it. So why Paris? What brought you to Paris in the first place? How did you end up falling in love with it here?
Yeah, well, everybody has their Paris story. And I really want to change everybody's mind that has a negative Paris story.
Me too. I take it really personally.
I know. I have taken the bait and said, I can change your mind in 24 hours. So anybody wants to take me up on it, come on one of my trips. I can change your mind in 24 hours. I promise you. But Why Paris? So my sister took me. So I've two sisters. One is 16 and one is 20 years older. So it's like I had three moms, right? And that middle sister, Bobby, took me on a trip to, I guess it was like a graduation trip before I started a college, university. And I had never been to Europe. And she had been to Europe like once and she wanted to show me Europe, in one trip. This is like the crazy thing that you do if we haven't been traveling very much. I think we had to throw a garage sale to come up with like extra money so that we had some spending money. It was really a kind of a shoestring thing. And we went to the UK, we went to France, we drove around, the windshield busted, we had crazy tales here and there. And that was the very first time. I'm like 17, just turning 18. And I didn't at that moment fall in love with Paris, but I remember standing outside Notre Dame. And, this is a long time ago, so I'm a little older than you, looking at the blackened face of Notre Dame, because it's before they cleaned it, and thinking, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. Because this is kind of a place you've read about and dreamt about. And, every girl, I think, in the world has. And that what really struck me on that trip was just, and this is the beauty of travel, is how everybody can really do their lives differently. And there's sort of no right or wrong. Like, okay, this group of people, this is how they do things. They eat at this time. They take a nap in the afternoon. They close their stores. It just kind of blew my mind how different. Of course, we're all so similar in the end, but just how people could live differently. And it was just, oh, kind of eye-opening. The second time I was 24, just married, went with my husband. My sister by that time had bought a house in France. So she, lit this fire that you could actually do that. It sort of showed us something unimaginable for many. But anyway, went down to see her house, which is in the Aveyron, which she still has. And then we came up through Bordeaux and then to Paris. And second time in Paris, we're staying at the Hotel L'Université, which is still there on the Rue Jacob on Rue L'Université. And I remember when we had to leave, I'm holding on to the bed saying, why do I have to leave this place? This is the most beautiful place in the world. Why would anyone ever leave? And I threw like a childish fit, and I was like just walking down the street and the florists, I just, the florists alone, not to mention, the history and the, walking by the La Palette, some of these classic places and knowing that you're walking the same paths of Ernest Hemingway, who I was a big fan of back then and still am, of course. But, it is the most beautiful city in the world. And I've been now to a lot of countries, a lot of cities, and it remains. There's a lot of other beautiful places, but man, as cities go, it's just drop dead gorgeous.
I agree. I often say that it has ruined me for other cities, just the fact that I get to be here all the time. When I travel somewhere new, like I went last year to Greece for the first time, and the guide said, I'm going to take you to the most beautiful city in Greece. And I went and I was like, oh, and then I realized it's just because my expectations are skewed because I live in Paris and it's just not a fair benchmark.
It's not fair. And
No.
I think the more you travel, which I really urge all of my clients to remember, don't compare places. There's just no point in that. Rwanda, you don't go there for the food. You go to France for the food. You go to Rwanda to be right next to a gorilla, a mountain gorilla. How cool is that? So it doesn't have to be, this is better, this is worse. No, it's like, these are two amazing places that you go to for different reasons,
Absolutely. Curious about what's going on in Paris right now? Don't Miss This takes you beyond the typical and the obvious, with a weekly roundup of the best of what's happening in Paris each week. Every Monday, you'll get 20 to 35 new Parisian events with descriptions, links, and all the details sent directly to your inbox. Never wonder what you're missing out on again. Sign up for Don't Miss This on Patreon at patreon.com/Paris Underground Radio. We'll be right back with City of Muses after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to City of Muses on Paris Underground Radio. What is advice that you have for a first-time traveler?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. I think it's brilliant.
Really?
No, I know. I think the most important thing is to get rid of your expectations. Now, I think that's a life lesson for everything, because when you wake up and you say in your mind, I want my day to go like this, it's worse when we plan a vacation, we plan a holiday, we plan a trip or retreat, whatever it is, and we think about it for months and months and months. And we imagine that this week or 2 weeks in our lives, let's say it's in Greece. Greece is amazing. We have a Greek trip going on right now. I love Greece. But I imagine these crystal clear waters and the food and maybe a really cute waiter, whatever you imagine. So that's really part of the fun, is the thinking about it. But then once you're on the plane, just discard everything and say, whatever happens, happens. And just look at all that is in front of you and appreciate it. Just be thrilled that you're there. Do not get wrapped up in, this has to be this way, this has to be this way, because then you will be disappointed, or you'll be frustrated, or you'll be annoyed. And it's just terrible to be in a beautiful place that you've thought about for many, many months. You paid a decent amount of money or a lot of money to go there. And then you're annoyed that they don't have an espresso coffee machine in the room or whatever it is. I like my coffee like this. It's breakfast. We're kind of weird about breakfast because that's our real habitual thing. And people will say, well, what do you mean you don't have oat milk or whatever? It's a different country. Okay. So you got to just know that you're not going to be in the same pattern as you are at home. And that's the point of travel, is to push yourself outside of those boundaries, to be open yourself up. I mean, really open yourself up to a different culture, a different way of life, without judgment. Just be curious. Be open, and go with the flow. If it's just you're too exhausted to go to that third museum or whatever it is that you've got planned in your mind, or if you come with us and you decide, I'm too tired, I don't want to go to dinner, then don't, go with the flow, listen to your body, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there, because most people are really nice and kind, and most people are not trying to rip you off and screw you over. There's a lot of people that come with a lot of fear, and fear stops you from enjoying yourself.
That is excellent advice. There's a lot of really juicy advice in there. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. It's a great question.
I mean, I think curiosity is an excellent watchword for travel.
Yes.
Stay open, stay curious. My niece came to visit me this summer for the very first time. She's 7 years old. It's her first time in Europe. And that's all I wanted was just I told her, just look at everything. Some things will be the same. Some things will be different. Let's just explore it all. And she would say, oh, this is wrong. And I would say, no, it's not wrong. It's just different. They do something different here. And I could see it changing her DNA, it's amazing.
Oh, think of that you gave that experience to her. She will never forget that.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I remember that's exactly what I told my kids. I had my two kids and my best friend's two kids. We were all in Paris in 1998. And they were still in the, let's go to the Jardin Luxembourg and, ride the carousel and, all of that. And I remember the other two kids, because my kids had been going there for a long time, but they said, this is so weird, it is strange to us. You can't walk you're not supposed to walk on the grass. And the only place you can't bring a dog.
Yes. Drives me crazy.
So, very odd to us, because the parks are for dogs and for hanging around in the grass, and Americans fine. But this is not America. This is France. So they were like, it's so weird. Why do they do it where we can't stand on the grass? I said, it's not weird. It's just different. So that was always the thing. As soon as I said, it's weird. And I said, no, it's not weird. It's just different. And, I still have to remind people that are coming with us who are 60 years old, it's not weird. It's just different, right?
It's an adventure.
Exactly.
It's a moment out of time. So if you don't get to have your espresso first thing in the morning the way that you normally like it, that's okay. It's a week, you'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. And then you might realize that, hey, you could do something different. It doesn't always have to be that. Maybe you'll pick up tea. Now, of course, there's espresso in France and most places, but
Yes.
that was an example. But we don't realize what creatures of habit we are. and how addicted we are to these sort of habitual behaviors because they make us feel safe, right? And that's fine, but that's not why you travel.
Yeah, exactly. So when you expanded outside of France, what was the first place that you went?
Well, I was lucky enough. I have this wonderful friend who has a castle in the UK. And she was kind enough to offer her a stay at her
Oh,
place.
wow.
And it was a garden tour through Paris and, a little bit of like Giverny, some places outside of Paris. And then we went on the train to her place, which is in Sussex. And we went to see her garden, which is absolutely amazing. And then some other gardens like Great Dixter. And we had a big group. It was really incredible. It was June. No, I think it was May, actually. This is obviously pre-COVID, so barely remember it, but it was beautiful. I'm a big fan of gardens. And it was, there's just gardens make me happy. Art makes me happy. And the ladies, it was a really cool mix of women. We had a lovely time. So that was the first foray. And then, oh man, I think we went to Bali and we did a ski trip. That's the one and only. I won't be doing that again. I'm not. That was too difficult. But in general, we try and have all kinds of different. I guess what I like to do, and I know you like to talk about creativity, which I think is such a beautiful framework for your conversations. I guess when I'm coming up with these trips, which is kind of the most fun, as well as taking the trips, of course, but creating a trip, I try and think of a framework. How can I design this trip so that you can go to a place or three places and see them through a point of view? It doesn't mean that it's the only way to see them, but like if you're taking around your niece who's 7, you're going to show her a particular kind of Paris. I'm going to show my son who's 25 or whatever, a totally different kind of Paris. But how do you go see, like right now, this trip, we're going to see Prague, Budapest, and Vienna. What do they have in common? Well, it's the Habsburg Empire. So you're talking about that history. And then let's go see some Art Nouveau buildings. So, I like to have a framework. We did a trip to Japan focused on wabi-sabi and the concept of wabi-sabi, which is really a wonderful aesthetic concept for people who are getting older because it reveres, imperfection, which is the opposite of sort of our culture. So, but I like to have a framework around the trip rather than just going and just checking off the places everybody goes, because then it doesn't have any creativity, I don't think. And then you don't get behind the scenes and speak to the people who make up that culture. And I also like to have a time, whether it's cooking class or perfume making or, learning about something that's tactile where you can touch it. I think that imbues the culture into you in a more visceral way rather than just seeing it, having a guide tell you the history. And of course, we do that too. But going to a market, doing something that's more sensory really helps to understand that culture in a deeper way.
I was going to ask you about that, about the connection to local culture while you're traveling. And I wonder, looking at your website, I can see that your trips, they look stunning. There's obviously a luxurious element to all of them. So how do you balance luxury with, for lack of a better word, authenticity, the local culture?
That's also a really great question. So I actually have banned the use of luxury on our website. We do, highly curated upscale tours, but the word luxury brings up a lot of different things for people, and everybody has their different definition of luxury. So your idea of luxury might be, helicopters and, caviar and champagne at night. Another person's luxury might be staying in a 4-star hotel and having room service, so it's very relative. So instead, I want to focus on, I guess, 3 things. Authenticity, in terms of we're really focused on authentic, responsible travel. So that means going to a location, learning about the culture, being open to that culture, meeting women of that culture, that to learn what lives are like for women. This is particularly interesting in cultures that are quite different than ours, maybe more so than, let's say, Europe. Now, the other thing is that we don't want to go at the height of the season. So we're going to go at shoulder season. We don't want to add to the over touristing, which is a real issue. As you know, and it's not fun to be crowded and crammed into some place. It's awful and nobody likes it. Plus, a lot of times it's too hot because it's summer and everybody's there with their family. So the luxury aspect of it, again, if you want to use that word, is the idea that you're in a small group, 6 to 10, and you've got usually myself or someone else as a facilitator and an expert in that place or in that thing that we're talking about. And so the idea behind the small groups and everybody gets their own room, you never have to share. The price that's there is for your own room. You get 2 glasses of wine with dinner and, it's 4 and 5-star hotels, but that's not the point of it. The point of it is really to be in this small group where each person can get to know one another. So I don't let you sit next to the same girl that you connected with on the first night. You got to get to know, Susie and Lorraine and every single person that's on that trip, because everyone has an interesting story. And it might be that Lorraine, who first day thought, turns out she's going to be your best friend because she's like so interesting, but you didn't get it right away. So I have a bigger mission than, saying this is a luxurious trip, because I think that's just luxury for luxury's sake is not important at all. My sense of this is to empower women to feel safe, to get to know one another, to come back with a new friend or 4, to be able to travel with them again or visit them, or, people create their own trips, do their own thing after that. I really, knowing that there's 53% of people in the United States that are single, women, 53% of us are single. And then there's a lot of us who are partnered up who, need some time on our own. Maybe our husband or a partner doesn't want to travel. Maybe he can't. Maybe he's busy working. Who knows? There's a lot of reasons. And it's just like if you've ever been on a girls' night or a girls' weekend, we all know how great you feel afterwards. You feel empowered and uplifted and you've laughed a lot. So that's really the idea. It's not about, 500, point cotton sheets at every location.
An excellent answer. And I was going to ask you about why you made these women-only experiences, but I feel like you just really answered that quite beautifully as well.
I did do one trip with guys, and a lady called me and she said, we were talking about doing a trip to Provence with her girlfriends. And she said, my husband really wants to go, and so do all theirs. So I made an exception, and they were lovely, lovely people. But it's just not the same. It's just not the same. And everybody knows who's listening to this right now, who's a woman, who's been out with one woman for coffee, but usually most of us have had a girls' night out, right? You share things on those nights, even if you're new to the group, that you do not share with mixed company. So we all know how women are. We are really good at bonding. Those of us who are not as good, are really helped in this atmosphere by others who give them permission to share. And of course, you don't have to reveal everything. You can create whatever, persona you want, but most people really feel comfortable in revealing their true selves and their desires and their sadnesses. And, people come after just becoming widows, and people come right after divorce or even, major surgery. I had a girl come after 6 weeks after brain surgery just to celebrate that she was alive,
Wow. Yeah, this is completely anecdotal, but this is like family folklore. When I was really little, we lived in London, and I guess we were there for 3 or 4 years, something like that. And my mom tells the story. I don't remember it, but my mom tells the story that the first year for my birthday, it was all girls. The second year, we invited one boy and somebody cried. And the third year, we invited 2 boys and there was a fight. Family folklore.
There you go.
What more can you say?
I mean, I love guys. I have a son.
Sure.
And they're fantastic. But we women need each other, and I really think we feed off one another. And I don't think if I could have gotten through my life thus far without my girlfriends.
Does French culture sometimes leave you scratching your head? Well, you might enjoy listening to our sister podcast, Navigating the French, hosted by journalist Emily Monaco. Each episode focuses on a different word in the French language, and Emily is joined by an expert who will help explore what that word says about French culture. Listen now to Navigating the French on ParisUndergroundRadio.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be right back with City of Muses after a word from our sponsors. And now, back to City of Muses on Paris Underground Radio. There's a certain kind of alchemy when there's a group of women in a room and they know they feel safe just to share. You're absolutely right.
And the other thing I just want to address is there are some women who will tell me, and this has not been my life experience, but there are some women who tell me, I don't get along as well with women because they had some bad experiences. I don't know, maybe they had a sister they fought with, or maybe they had a bad boss and whatever. But I find that most of those women are pleasantly surprised because we establish and we actually train our facilitators in, I have this Girls Guide Bible sort of, outlining this whole process to create this group dynamic that's really supportive. It's like a sisterhood. And that's what I believe in. And that's part of the mission. It's really not about going to, 5 cool countries, but it's about this mission of empowering women, but creating that safe space. So even people that are a little maybe more distrustful of women because they've had some bad experiences, they come out, really pleasantly surprised and feel enriched.
I love that. One other thing I was going to ask you, which goes along very nicely with what you've just said, is what are some common misconceptions about what you do and about how women travel?
That's great. I think a common misconception that comes just straight to mind is all we want to do is go shopping, Now, I like to shop, all right? A lot of women don't like to shop. There's plenty of women that don't like to shop.
I don't like to shop.
So I don't do shopping trips, but I always give you free time in the afternoon to lay down and read a book, to take some time away. You need that time to yourself. And that's why people really like to have their own room too. Like even if you come with your best friend and she is just like your favorite person on earth, it's still nice to have your own room and get away. But you can use that time for shopping or resting or going to the spa or whatever. That I think is a common misconception. The thing that, and I think we just mentioned it really, but that I think the media feeds this sort of cat, fighting thing. Obviously, we've had 1 or 2 situations where, people got rubbed the wrong way, but we also have trained now. We actually just used a leadership coach who's an absolutely amazing woman who coached. We have about 18, 20 leaders. And we talked about all the different scenarios, like what was the most difficult scenario that you've had? And, we learned from each other as well as from her. And we came out with like sort of clearer best practices, what to do if this, that, and the other to, shut down those issues when they come up. Because in general, women really want to get along with one another. We really, as opposed to, we don't talk sports and who won this, and not that's how guys connect. And I think, a lot of guys, not all, obviously, and that's fantastic. But we are looking for common ground. Like, oh, you grew up in North Carolina. I used to go to North Carolina, whatever it is. Like, we're always looking for that. So I find that 90% of women, they come on this kind of a trip and they really want to connect. So this, I think that we should really discard this old-fashioned idea that women are at each other's necks and super competitive, because I don't see that. 99% of the time, 95% of the time, I don't see that. I see women as really supporting one another.
I agree with you. I think that there's something that we were taught generationally that, first of all, we had to compete with men. And then it became like in the workforce, okay, maybe a woman can have a spot at the table, but there's one spot and every woman is fighting for that one spot. And now I think it's much more common for women to look to each other and say, wait a minute, why do we need the man here at all? Let's just take over the table ourselves.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm with you there.
And I think,
where do I sign up?
Exactly. I think that allows for more breathing room. And I think the more that happens, I mean, my girlfriends are the first ones to champion anything that I do and vice versa. And there isn't a competition. If say, for example, we were competing for something and I won it and they didn't, they'd be like, fabulous, congratulations, let's go celebrate. And I think that that's not unusual,
No,
actually.
it's not. And those people in your life that are not doing that, you need to, see them once a year, maybe.
Right.
And it's just usually their own insecurities and it's not about you.
Of course. Of course. That's another life lesson with maturity. Very rarely is it actually about you. It's usually about them.
Exactly.
And just like when you're mad at people, it's usually about you and not about them.
Exactly. Because we spend most of our time thinking about ourselves.
Exactly.
I know my kids, when they were little, they'd be like, wait, what do you think about the way I look? I said, look, nobody is worried about the way you look because they're worried about the way they look. They can barely see you.
I probably lost like months of my life as a teenager worrying about what other people thought. And then now realizing that nobody was thinking about me at all because they were all just thinking about themselves.
That's the most freeing thing when you realize like nobody really cares about what you say or do, unless it's super offensive, of course.
Sure. I mean,
within reason, but
we live in a society. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So is there anywhere in the world that you haven't been that you'd like to go?
Oh my gosh, are you kidding? Of course. So I think when you're 20 and you start traveling, you have some places, and then you're 40 and you've traveled quite a bit. This is just sort of my scenario. And then you're starting to go to more exotic places. So exciting when you first go to, Asia and, oh, wow, Africa and all this. Now I'm thinking about how much time do I have left to travel? And what's exciting to me is I had an 88-year-old woman go with me last year to Japan, and there was two over 80-year-olds, and they were schlepping their bags through the airport and going on the trains and the trams. Because, that's a country that's all about mass transit. You can't get a van there. So these people have become my mentors. So I'm counting on being able to travel for another 25, 30 years. My dad traveled till he was 90. And some people are, doing it even later. So, but it's now about like how many of these 50 countries left can I get to? I do count countries because at this point, 83 is pretty impressed. I'm kind of impressed with myself. Not that I I don't want to be that person who's impressed with themselves. But at the same time, you have to look back and say, hey, that's pretty cool that I kind of accomplished that. Like it's something I want to do.
Absolutely.
But I'm not that person who wants to go to every single place because there's some funky places that are really not so safe. And, I don't want to go to every country just to say I was there. Although the people who do, I applaud them because I think it's really, really cool. But I'd rather go back to Italy another 4 times and France another 15 or 20 times, But gosh, I have kept a list. I have an app called Visited. So I keep a list of like where I've been, where I want to go, kind of like in order. Because, if you don't write down what you want to envision in your life, if you don't keep track of it, nobody else is going to. So I think Brazil is a place I'm dying to go. Haven't been. My husband and I really want to go to Antarctica. Have not done that. We did get to go to the Galapagos last year, which is just amazing. This was a big bucket list, this trekking with gorillas, and that is just mind blowing. It's so cool. But I love Africa. God, there's a lot more countries I'd love to go in Africa. Gosh, what else? I mean, there's some smaller places like Sri Lanka that I'd like to go to. But I think probably right now, Brazil is at the top of the list. Going to Chile in November. Very excited about going to Patagonia and all that. So finally, getting some good Central America and South America action because we went to Peru earlier this year. It's one of those like, you've dreamt about Machu Picchu all these years and it holds up to all your dreams.
I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, that's still on my list.
Well, you will go. You'll do it. Come with us. We'd love to have you.
I would love to. This has been it's been so lovely getting to know you. Where can people find you and how can they keep up to date with what you and Girls Guide are doing?
Well, thank you, Jennifer. This has just been such a great, fun afternoon and evening for me. Please just go to our website. It's Girls Guide to the World, 2 spelled out, T-O, the world. So girlsguidetotheworld.com. From there, you'll see all of our trips. I do want to invite people. We have a private Facebook group that is growing. in numbers by leaps and bounds every day. And the idea behind that is called the Girls Guide Traveling Sisterhood, sort of like Sister of the Traveling Pants, but a little bit different. So the idea there is that it's an absolute advertising free zone. We are, I don't care if you come on our trips or someone else's or go by yourself, but we're there to sort of cheer each other on, to sort of just go for it, get out there. You can join that by going to the contact page on our website. From there, you'll also see our Instagram, which is GG2 the world, the number 2, but don't worry about that. You can find it all on the website. But we're very active, obviously, on social media, like everyone else. And but we'd love for you to join that private Facebook group. It's a great place to also talk to other people who've been on trips, to meet people who are going on a trip that maybe you signed up for, or just to learn a little bit more about what it's all about, but also just to talk about, your hopes and dreams. And it's another sort of safe place that we women can cheer each other on. And that's kind of what we're all about, is to build that community of really supportive people. And travel is not frivolity. It is an investment in yourself, in longevity. They've just proven that you live longer when you take time out of your lives. They call it pattern interrupt. So, getting rid of that horrible list that we all have day after day, you really have to take a break from that. And it doesn't have to be on one of our trips. It could be going to visit your aunt in California, or anything to just get out of the day-to-day, to reimagine yourself, to reconnect with the world, to reconnect with yourself, to find new friends. There's so many reasons. It really helps you, stay healthier. There's all kinds of science behind this, and it makes logical sense. You really have to be kind to yourself and invest in yourself, not only health and wellness, but this is part of health and wellness, is to take time for yourself.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
That's my little soapbox. That's my little soapbox for the night. Thank you so much, Jennifer. It was a lot of fun.
For me too. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to City of Muses. If you've liked what you heard, please take a moment to rate and review it. This is the fastest and easiest way to help support the podcast. Tell a friend who could use a little inspiration. You can also subscribe to the Paris Underground Radio newsletter over on our website, parisundergroundradio.com, which comes out every Sunday and gives a little peek into what's on the network for the week ahead. I'm your host, Jennifer Garrity. You can find me on all socials at Jennyphoria. That's JennyPhoria. Thank you for listening, and may you find inspiration wherever you go. City of Muses was produced by Jennifer Garrity for Paris Underground Radio.